Rosa Hance, a Maryland chapter chair of the Sierra Club. And I live in Southern Maryland in the ancestral homeland of the Piscataway peoples, just downstream along the Potomac River where the Morgantown coal plant is. Now, first, I want to share some basic framework for the changing national landscape when it comes to power generation in the United States. So you can see that for decades, the coal was on the rise in the United States, but in the past couple of decades, we've seen coal generation plummet and other sources of energy take over. So I see then zooming in to Maryland itself, that we have coal that has reached lows in the late, in the 2015 era, when coal has, production has really shrunk quite a bit in Maryland, and now going from 58% a short 20 years ago of our overall power generation in states, now 14%. And that 14% is significant because with the passage of the Clean Energy Jobs Act in 2019, there was a carve-out established in the amount of energy generation that solar would be receiving, or that solar should be producing by the year 2030, and that's also 14%. So when we talk about transitioning off of coal and we talk about replacing with renewable energy, that's in line with the overall goals established by the state of Maryland, and that we will have the replacement energy sources that we need. So again, taking a closer look at Maryland and the actual, the plants that are across Maryland. So there were 7 power plants when we created this graphic a few years ago, but in 2019, Crane Power Plant in Baltimore was closed, and just a few short months ago in the spring, it was announced that Dickerson Power Plant in Montgomery County would stop burning coal in August. So this past August, it is no longer burning coal. And interesting to note that Montgomery County local officials met with GenOn, the out-of-state owners of Dickerson, Chalk Point, and Morgantown plant, all owned by the same company, and they're exploring their options for renewables and energy storage on site. So it is possible. It is something that's happening in other, in other parts of the state, and I think that's important to highlight because we want to make sure that no plant and no community gets left behind in this transition that is happening. So in Western Maryland, there's Warrior Run, which has a contract that goes until 2030. And just in this past month, Talon Energy, owners of Brandon Shores and Wagner plants in northern Anne Arundel County, announced that they will stop burning coal by the year 2025. And then the closest plant to Morgantown, Chalk Point plant, also owned by GenOn, announced this summer that they will cease burning coal by the next year, June of 2021. So really, all that's left without any type of publicly announced plan for retirement of these climate disrupting, health harming, coal burning units is Morgantown. And we see that throughout the past couple of decades, coal generation has really, really declined in Maryland. These plants aren't really burning that much. They're not really being used as much as they were. However, just them being online at all has a really huge impact, outsized impact on pollution. So what I'm talking about here is the percentage of the electricity that Maryland gets from in-state coal is at this point less than 10%, about 9.4% in 2019. However, let's take a look at the pollution of the Maryland power sector. The carbon dioxide, well, coal is over half the coal plants is over half of that pollution. It's more than 3/4, it's more than 75% of the nitrous oxides pollution that's going into our air, and almost 95% of the sulfur dioxide is from burning coal. So it's only generating 9% of our, or it's only of the electricity that we consume, and yet this is the output. This is the health harming, the smog forming pollution that it's creating. This is simply unacceptable. So let's take a look specifically at Morgantown, because it's one of the dirtiest and largest sources of pollution in the state, and it has made some news nationally on that front as well, unfortunately. So a few years ago, the Maryland Department of the Environment set strict pollution limits in their permitting process, and Morgantown owners battled it in court. And despite several attempts to overturn those decisions, stricter limits were set, and then the same owners exploited a loophole known as the Voluntary Incentives Program in order to subvert the compliance deadlines, which would have gone into place November 2020, that would have really strictly limited the toxic water discharge of awful toxic heavy metals like mercury, arsenic, selenium. And there have been numerous documented environmental injustices from Morgantown plant. Air quality issues, again, the water discharge pollution, even under more lenient limits, they were still violating those. And then, of course, in 2019, there was investigative work done by the Potomac River Keepers that revealed a massive coal ash mishandling, which really puts our water at risk, because you can see it's literally right on the banks of the Potomac River in Newburgh, Maryland. And anyone who's traveled over the Harry Nice Bridge to Virginia can see how obviously it's impacting our water. So what's happening now and what's next? As I mentioned, we've seen plants across the state close, or at least set their plans to close, but we have an issue when there isn't a plan in place that will support the workers at these plants who've been working there for a long time, good jobs, and the communities that have been bearing the pollution burden, and also have economic effects in the local county tax base and so forth. So it's critical that when the Maryland General Assembly convenes in January, that they should establish a clear enforceable schedule to manage this transition, to make sure that we are not seeing the boom and the bust of the fossil fuel industry impact a vulnerable community. And the Maryland Commission on Climate Change included this in their 2020 annual report, and it's even a part of the Maryland Draft Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act plan, which specifically lays out the ways in which a just transition should happen. And the Coal Community Transition Act is, in fact, using these best practices, providing a timeline, creating worker training programs. People need someplace to land. People need, something that the next step, and of course, providing an oversight body that's going to have members of impacted communities as a part of it, and funding. So these are all things that are critical to manage the transition to a clean energy economy, and there are huge impacts that happen. So it's critical that we look to other states who have done it, learn and do the right thing for our communities. So we have good examples in other states, New York, Colorado, New Mexico, and more. So what we need now is action and a just transition from dirty coal to clean renewable energy, supporting workers and impacted communities. Thank you.